Hey everybody, Sarah Batchelor here, the Neuro-Spicy music teacher, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about the fact that aggression is a symptom. And this is something I've said in other videos for sure. It's certainly, well, it's not. I'm at a loss of words just because it feels like we've been saying this for a while. It feels like this conversation's been had since 2003, more than a couple of times, and it certainly was being screamed out loud for the past 12 months at the government. I don't know how they weren't aware, but ignorance is bliss, and here we go. So tonight, I thought I would delve into briefly the Aggression and Complexity Action Team and what they found in their study that they put together in June of this past year, 2025, which I'd like to point out was just a few months before we actually went on strike over working conditions that were unsafe and issues of aggression, which we knew were happening. And we had the data from 2003, that's a long time ago, plus all they had to do was walk into our rooms. But anyways, the final report was actually released November 21st, well after we've been ordered back to work, well after our rights have been stripped away, and with no changes. I mean, they've ordered us back to work with no changes in support, right? We've walked back into the same situation that we were in initially. And that in and of itself is super frustrating. So what are we seeing in our classrooms? Well, aggression has been rising for years. So first of all, before we talk further, let's talk about what we're defining aggression as. So aggression can be verbal. So that could be bullying, it could be name calling, it could be, well, screaming in someone's face, verbal, right? It could be physical, so pushing, hitting, kicking, throwing items at people, something I've experienced a fair bit of this year. Dysregulation, which leads to the above, right? Dysregulation, again, a lot of what we're seeing, the aggressive behaviors, are symptoms of underlying issues, and dysregulation is an underlying issue. And when we think dysregulation, we often think kids with special needs. We talk about kids with ADHD and autism, we're always talking about dysregulation, which just means that our mind and our body aren't in a place where we can be learning or can be working in the environment that we're currently in successfully because there's too much going on inside our head or there's too much going on around us. So for example, I do noise all day. I'm a band teacher, music teacher, right? I'm a sensory seeker. I like noise. But I also don't like random noise I don't have any control over. It can be very overwhelming. Music is organized sound, right? I can do music all day, but I can't be in the gym. I can't tell where the balls are bouncing from. I miss behavior things I need to shut down because I'm just overwhelmed by all of the sound. And I have synesthesia, so I see color with sound. So the best way to describe it is kind of like, for me, it's like there's a transparency, a film with color that I sort of view the world through, or it sort of runs in the background, right? And so when I'm doing music, I can see the shapes and the colors, and it really helps me. I know which kid's playing the wrong note because I'm like, and there's a yellow sound over there when it should be green. In the gym, I can't see. So my vision is actually impacted to a degree by what my brain is trying to process with seeing all of these colors. So that's dysregulation. And that's something that I, as an adult, deal with on a daily basis, but I know how to regulate myself. I know what situations I can handle, what I can't, right? Kids don't have all of that information knowledge, and they certainly don't have a power or control over the situations that they're in. They don't get to choose which classroom they're in, right? If you have a kid who is sensory avoidant, music and gym aren't always their favorite places. There's ways we can make it work. There's ways we can make it so it's not painful, but their initial response will be dysregulation, right? And just think about yourself when you've had a bad day and it's just like something little goes wrong, like, Starbucks gets your order wrong. And it just, that's the final straw, right? You're just, and I'm done, right? That's dysregulation, right? And we all experience it. And that point where it just becomes a tipping point and we're overwhelmed and we're just done, right? So that is something we're definitely seeing, and not just in special needs kids. All right, I want to be very clear about that. Dysregulation is a human condition. Unsafe classrooms, as a result of these three key things, really. And we've been reporting this for a long time. There was a time when we were collecting this data fairly regularly. And then, just like when they stopped collecting class size data, they stopped collecting data on incidents of aggression. And honestly, it's significantly underreported, right? Because the amount of time it takes me to do the paperwork I need to do to report one incident is about 20 minutes. I have to go look up the kid's birth date, their parents' names, numbers, like just the amount of information. I teach 600 kids every 2 days. So getting into the demographic information to fill out that form for me, when every 30 minutes there's another class and there's no transition time in between, I don't always get time to report. Often I'll get home and it's like 8 o'clock at night. I'll be like, damn it. I was supposed to do some paperwork on what happened earlier today, but I didn't. But now that they have done the study that was released on November 21st, here is what the data shows, not just my anecdotal blah, blah, blah. So they say 52% of teachers have experienced aggression within, let's just say, 6 months. Okay, 52%. Well, I think that number's underreported because, yeah, in the past 6 months, I've experienced aggression in the past 12 hours. It's part of my job now. 93% over their careers have experienced aggression that they would report, right? Like we all see microaggressions and small things and we deal with conflict all day. That's our job. We're conflict, mediators, and we're helping kids build the skills to handle their own conflicts because sometimes aggression is their go-to. But 93% over their careers have seen or experienced aggression in their rooms. 50% report injury. 90% emotional effects, like dysregulation when you get home because you have to decompress. I had a young teacher in our building who was hit for the first time in his career earlier this year by a student. And it's not about how hard the kid hits. It's not about the injury. I mean, the guy had a bruise. That's not what it's about. The emotional effects of it. Imagine how you'd feel if your own child up and like clocked you. Like that. I mean, you'd be angry, but there's more to it than that. Like that hurt, right? Like it's there's trust that's broken if it gets to the point where there's violence, right? How do we repair that relationship so we can work with that kid again? Because guess what? They're going to be right back in our classroom, right? So this young teacher, he got hit, and my response was, all right, you need to go to the bathroom, you need to get a coffee, and you need to go sit down. I'm going to take your class. It was my prep. I will take your class. What are you guys doing? Oh, no, I'm fine. Yeah, I know you're fine. Go take a break. Give yourself some time just to process what has just happened to you, right? And he really pushed back on that initially. At the end of the day, he thanked me for it. And it was, yeah, I know you're right. I needed just some time to sit with that and process because we do. Because you're then going to go back to your room of 27 other little people and you have to be on, right? You can't be upset. You can't be dysregulated. You need to be ready to teach. Sometimes you need to take a step back. And so, people like myself and anybody else who'd been involved would have absolutely volunteered, right, to step in and give the poor guy a break. But the emotional effects of it, and we carry those. I mean, we really love our kids. I mean, we're greedy teachers and all that, but no, we really love our kids. And it breaks our hearts when we can't help them all, which we can't, but we try to help the ones we can, right? And 70% have had physical symptoms. So those would be the injuries or long-term stress issues, stress breaks we've had to take, leaves, we'll call those. I absolutely would say that my fibromyalgia is definitely exacerbated when the aggression in my classroom increases. My autoimmune issues increase problems, right? I have more trouble sleeping. Those are just things that I can report as physical symptoms after I've had a day where I've dealt with something really unexpected, right? And these numbers existed before the job action. I'm going to tell you a couple stories tonight about my own experiences, and they're definitely not just since July of this year, right? So this needs to be screamed from the rooftops because aggression is a symptom. You need to understand that behavior is communication, right? And the longer I teach and the longer I talk to humans, the more I realize that everything is about power and control. It really is. And schools nowadays aren't the same as the schools that I would have grown up in 40 years ago in elementary school, where the teacher says, we will stop, we will do this, we will do that, and everybody complies immediately. Not that everyone complied immediately back in my day, but these kids are used to negotiating. Gentle parenting, which I personally really love a lot of the gentle parenting stuff when it's done with consequences, because otherwise it's just all positive and blowing air at people's bottoms, and that doesn't help anybody develop into a more socially, emotionally aware human. But I like the idea of talking to kids and finding out why they're behaving the way they are. And sometimes they can't answer that, so you have to help them figure it out. I enjoy those conversations because they're productive, right? But when we don't have those conversations and kids are left to their own devices to try and solve problems, they react in some very unpleasant ways. And aggression is one of those ways. And aggression isn't always voluntary, right? If you think about a nonverbal child, so imagine yourself being nonverbal. If you couldn't talk to anybody, if you ever have to wake up from an anesthetic after a procedure and you're trying to like tell the people in the room something or ask what time it is and you can't. So what do we see people do? They like bang on the bed and hey, look at me. I started signing. I don't know. I'm a weirdo. But we tried to communicate in another way. We made noise, right? We were physical. That's communication. Now, could it be interpreted as aggression? Yeah, if I up and whack somebody in the process, absolutely. Am I yelling at someone? Maybe, because I'm confused and I don't know where I am. I've just woken up from surgery, right? It could be aggressive behavior, but it's a symptom of how I'm feeling. I'm unable to communicate it in a socially acceptable or expected manner. Therefore, it is unexpected. Therefore, it's not good. And so it becomes aggression, right? So we have a lot of kids, not a lot, but there are children who their aggression is simply just out of frustration, right? They can't communicate in any other way. Maybe they haven't been provided the proper tech devices they need to talk, the iPad where you point and it speaks for you, right? If we remove those barriers, the aggression decreases significantly. The moment a child can verbalize or in some constructive way tell you their needs, they no longer need to act out to get what they need, right? So we see a lot of that kind of aggression in the classroom. Kids who've just reached the limit of their capabilities, they no longer can, it's not like a choice. This is as much as I can do, and then they blow up because they're frustrated, right? We also see aggression stemming from some of the systemic issues, the large class sizes. I have a question. I have had my hand up for minutes, and I'm not even under exaggerating. I had a kid in band today who literally sat there with her hand up like this. Well, I dealt with 4 other problems that I could not turn away from, and then I was trying to fix an instrument when I finally got to their question. I even said to the young lady, I'm like, sweetie, put your hand down. I see you. I just can't yet. You're 4th on my list, right? Sometimes it's just, and that's a class of 47 kids. It's a band class. I want big band classes. It's different, but sometimes you have to wait for attention, and that can be harder for some people than others, right? Lack of EAs. So an educational assistant, they can bridge some of those gaps. They get to build that personal relationship with a high needs student that I don't always have time to build. I'm really good at building relationship quickly. That's one of my gifts as a teacher, and that's why I do so well with a different group of kids every 30 minutes, and I know them, and I love them, and they love me for the most part. Not all of them some days, right? If I made you sit in the hall for 5 minutes today, I may not be your favorite person right now, but that's okay, right? We are not free from the consequences of our actions. But an EA who has that time to build that relationship, that connection, they can often see things before they happen. Because honestly, my biggest classroom management technique for stopping aggression is to remove triggers. When the children are not in a position to remove those triggers themselves. Otherwise, it's my job to teach them to recognize the triggers and manage them. Because as an adult, my triggers are my problem, right? The fact that I have some PTSD things that if you bring up certain topics, I'm going to get upset or I'm going to have a physical response to, that's on me, right? I have to learn to manage those things. But they're children. They don't know how yet. Many adults don't know how yet. So I think the expectation that they should be able to manage these situations is unrealistic. And so until they can, we need to intervene sometimes. And so, that's EAs are gold for that, right? They get to know the kids and the kids around them, the other kids in the class, because it's very rare for you to have an EA who is specifically assigned to just one human and they stay with that human all day or even half a day. I see my EAs in our building switching children all the time, right? Often they're just in a room as general support, but they're still another adult building relationship with kids, another set of eyes, another set of ears, right? Prevention is worth a pound of cure. Absolutely, right? Proximity is my biggest classroom management tool. As soon as a kid starts being a little goofy, like today they were doing some line dancing stuff, and I had these 3 boys who were too cool to dance. So I just kind of wandered around back to the room and stood between them. I didn't say a word, I just danced. Guess what they reluctantly did? They danced with me. They did pretty good. But proximity, knowing that somebody is there watching, often is all you need to solve problems. But there's 47 kids, you're not getting over there. So that extra body in the room. Missing assessments. All right. If I don't know why you're behaving the way you are, an easy assumption is it's a choice. When I don't have the screenings done, when I don't have ed psychs, when I don't have other data, even anecdotal, because a lot of us can't afford an ed psych assessment. They're like thousands of dollars now. And although I heard the University of Alberta students can do it for $700 and you can claim it through AHS for ADHD. Anyways, I saw that in passing somewhere today. You'd have to look up more details on it. But I read that somewhere. But if we don't have assessments, then sometimes we don't know why. And so then we jump to the wrong conclusion and we respond in an inappropriate way. And we make the situation worse, right? Sometimes without the coding, these kids aren't flagged for support. So you may have kids who need support who aren't getting it because they don't qualify, because they don't have a code, which means they don't have an IEP, right? And even with all the different funding changes, you can go and watch my videos on how that works. Yeah, missing assessments, it really helps, right? So then you'll be like, oh, why are the teachers against all these screenings coming in? It's because we already have those. It's just more of the same thing. And the ones that they're bringing in aren't the most effective. They really aren't. And honestly, as a teacher screening my room, I can just very, very quickly read the room within the first couple of days of getting to know my students. And I'm like, that one has an issue of some kind. That one I need to keep an eye on. That one I can, right? And then I go and I look and I see, oh, do they have coding? Do they have this and that, right? Because with 600 students, it's not, if I had a homeroom, believe me, before I met your children, I would sit down and I would go through a dossier and I would read. I would read everyone. But when I see 8 to 10 classes a day of 30 plus kids, no, sweetie, I'm not doing that. I don't have time. So, but thankfully I've got lots of experience in the field. I trust my instinct. I'm very good at flagging kids who need further assessments and being looked at, right? I think honestly, trusting teachers as the first line of defense and screening, I think that's good bang for your buck. We know what's normal and typical. Normal is a stupid word. It's just a setting on a dryer. We know what's expected at that age for development. We know a lot of things because we spend a lot of time with a lot of kids that age. And the reason parents miss a lot of that is you spend a lot of time with your child. Do you have, the base knowledge of seeing over 1,000 kids in that age group, to compare to? Norms become very apparent when you start spending lots of times with the same age group, right? And even like if it's your first child, what do you really know? What did I know? Not enough, right? We don't know what we're signing up for. We don't know what's different. Everything our child does is brilliant and wonderful. Of course it is. But, how many of us went and did all the flashcards with our firstborns and thought they were gifted? And my oldest is very, very smart and he is actually gifted, but I had nothing to compare that to. I was 22 years old. I was a university student. Yeah, sure. I had younger siblings. Yeah, I babysat. I didn't have anything to compare it to. Right? So, case in point, even when you do have things to compare it to, sometimes you miss it. My youngest, he's my 5th child. See, I've had some practice at this point. I've been a mother for 15 years by the time he came around. I've been teaching for 14 years by the time he came around. Somehow, when he started kindergarten, I didn't know that he had ADHD. I didn't know he needed support. I didn't know that he would be aggressive because in our home, he wasn't. And the reason he wasn't is because our house was already set up for neurodiversity with other children with similar diagnoses. So everything was labeled. We used first and next language. We had his sleep schedule and routines in a way that worked for his wiring, because it works for my wiring, which is where he got his wiring from, not from Tylenol. And I missed it. right? So screenings are valuable, right? His teacher didn't miss it though, right? I showed up to the Christmas concert and there was an adult following my kid around, and I leaned over to Q's auntie and I went, does it look like he has an aide? And she's like, yeah, I wonder what that's about. So then we had the conversation, right? Missing assessments matter. And COVID hit us hard on there because we have a bunch of kids who missed out on those social opportunities where other people's eyes would have spotted what their parents couldn't. Right? It's not that I'm not saying negligence. This is not at all. It's when you know, you know. When you don't, you don't. Right? Especially if it's your first child, right? Or I don't know, there's a lot of reasons, right? There's cultural reasons, right? There's things that present differently, or you might interpret differently based on the lens that you see the world through. Right? You may not see it as this will be a concern in the classroom, or this will be a concern in life, right? Because your child functions well in your world because you meet their needs, because you read your kid. You know your child, right? Nobody knows their kid better than their parents, right? I mean, teachers, I think and coaches and people like us, I think we're good second and third place. But, parents, honestly, right? You're the real, the OG, screeners for these kids. And when they don't know what they're looking for or what to compare it to, things get missed. And so a lot of that early intervention piece for speech, because a lot of kids are coded with speech issues. Like, I'm going to make up a number. I'm going to say 30%. I don't think it's that high. It's probably between 20 and 30. It's a lot. A lot of kids under the age of 8 need some sort of support in speech, whether it's with a pronunciation issue, whether it's a processing issue. They outgrow it. No, they don't. They get support and they move past it. You have a kid with a lisp and it's cute when they're little. We address it and we help them move past it, right? This isn't something they're going to outgrow. So when we're missing things early, we're missing those opportunities when it's easier because of brain plasticity, because science, they're sponges, those first 5 years especially. And I mean, if you miss it, you don't miss out completely. It just means your kid's going to have to work harder to get to where they could have been, right? So the important part of the assessments and screenings is making sure that we're not missing opportunities to get ahead of problems. And the idea being, if we heavily fund intervention at an early age, like really dig in when they're young. When they're older, we have more kids who are, the gap in ability goes from this to more like this, where it was when I went to school 40 years ago and we didn't have inclusion. Even with inclusion, if we're putting the stuff in at the beginning, this gap gets smaller. And for some of those kids, they catch up. And then they continue with their peers, right? That intervention is so important. So when you look back at the funding structure and you look at what the current government has done as far as cuts go to early intervention funding, PUF funding, which my MLA Angela Pitt didn't know what PUF funding was, program unit funding. Look into it, because this is a way to cure it. So we have to find out why, so that we don't have the symptom of aggression. We need to get in there when they're young. Mental health gaps. Now, I know today, it's December the 3rd, I see on my good old social media that the government has made an announcement. Mental health. They're going to give money for mental health. It's a re-announcement. Plot twist, they've already announced it back in February. And the funding isn't enough. It's December, and that amount of funding they've offered us won't make it to June. But they are acknowledging. So I shall extend them some grace on that. Thank you for acknowledging that back in February, but then re-announcing it now. I don't know why we're re-announcing it now. Anyways, mental health gaps. So right, this is a big deal. And so what sort of things cause mental health gaps? Right? There's a lot of everyday things that our kids are experiencing. Not enough sleep, not enough food. Right? Isn't it 50% of the kids in this province? No, that's the wrong number. I'm not going to say number. But food insecurity is ridiculous. I've said it in another video. My ADHD brain isn't remembering the number. But food, I think it's 1 in 10. 1 in 10 kids. Somebody Google it, throw it in the comments later. I'd appreciate it. But food insecurity. So breakfast programs are really important in our schools, right? Yeah, seriously, you should see how excited some of those kids are. It hurts my heart. They're so excited. Yesterday? No, it wasn't yesterday, but earlier this week, a little boy. It was the end of the rush and there was like 3 halves of a bagel left over. Like not everyone had grabbed. And he's like, I can have 2? Oh yeah, dude, you can have all 3. oh my God, really? Really? I can have 3? And he was so excited. And then he went and he shared one with a friend. But this kid was starving. He was hungry. I mean, how are you going to learn when you're hungry? You're not. Science. Go watch my video on Bloom's versus Maslow, that whole. You can't learn. It's not even possible. They're in survival mode. The amygdala is pumping adrenaline into their little systems. Ooh, wait. What does extra adrenaline do to our bodies? Extra strength, faster reaction time. That sounds like a perfect solution for aggression. Let's put these kids in fight or flight mode and send them to school. Oh, wait, we're surprised that so-and-so threw a chair. No, we're not. What else are they going to do? Their Paleolithic brain is throwing signals and hormones into their body. That's what's happening. Aggression is the symptom. It's what we see, right? So we have mental health gaps because kids aren't getting basic needs met, right? When you're tired, you're not thinking clearly anyways, right? Like it's processing, it's a problem. Then we have lots of societal issues, right? Domestic violence. We have kids who are in homes that aren't safe. What about the stress of moving to a new country? 40% of those kids in Rocky View School Division come from families that the parents weren't born in Canada. 40%. So supports from other agencies to help those families get settled and stable and acclimate. Yeah, those are important because without them, kids struggle. And that's when we start to see mental health gaps. Now, the majority of mental health diagnoses can't be made really young. Like even ADHD, which isn't the mental health diagnosis, but 7. 7 is the age when you can officially stamp it according to the DSM-5. The DSM-5 is the Bible for psychologists, and all the diagnostic criteria is in it. And it gets updated every once in a while, but it's the DSM-5 right now. When we look at a lot of the issues from trauma, I had a child that I thought had issues with autism and apraxia. It was trauma. It can present very, very much the same way. So we really need assessments. We need supports. We need people to help us find out the why, because I was handling that particular child's situation incorrectly. I mean, I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I could have been doing things that were better, right? So those mental health gaps, right? So we start to see them as young as 7, 8, 9. We start to see kids who are identifying that they're having issues. The youngest child that I've taught that has come to me with a suicidal ideation is 8. Yeah, this is happening. The body image stuff. I have a grade 5 boy who was being body shamed. Not okay, right? Dealing with it as best we can in the classroom, making sure kids understand this is not okay. But when you're under that constant barrage of peers, voices, right? Yeah, it wears on you, right? You can only take so much. And honestly, I want to tell you, one of the reasons that bullying is such a problem in schools where children have more than one teacher throughout the day is because they have more than one teacher throughout the day. And then so we're talking middle school, high schools especially. So for case in point, today I had in class, hypothetically, student A is poking student B with a pencil. And it's not like stabbing the kid, just like poke, 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 until the kid goes, knock it off, right? Tells him off. He yells, I'm like, hey, pipe down over there, right? Because the loud voice is the one that gets my attention. I don't see the poke, poke, poke. He poked me with the pencil. I take the pencil, I move the kids, whatever I'm going to do. It's done for me. I have solved the problem in my space. 30 minutes later, he's in a new room. Kid comes up behind him again. Poke, 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 poke. Now, that's not exactly bullying. That's picking on, right? Bullying, it's more to it. We use bullying far too much. That's a whole nother conversation. But it is pestering. It's annoying. It is constant. Teacher in that room deals with it. It's done. Next class happens again. Teacher doesn't see it this time because so-and-so over here has locked somebody in a tuba case, right? 4th class, it's happening again. Teacher sees it, doesn't think it's that big a deal, doesn't deal with it. Just poking him with a pencil. Happens in the 5th class. Kid getting poked, loses his poop, turns around, punches kid with pencil. Guess who's getting suspended? Bullying and things happen because the bullies or the people, I don't want to use bullies, the aggressor is not stupid and they're not going to do it in the same time over and over and keep getting caught, right? And the system isn't designed for us to keep tabs on things like that. Like sometimes it'll be months and we'll be having a conversation in the hall or staff room after school and it's like, oh, I had this issue with this kid today. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's happening in my room too. And then we start putting the feelers out, right? So tip to your children, if they are dealing with somebody who's picking on them in multiple scenarios, they need to tell the teacher, this happened in my class before this too. This is going to happen in the class after that. This has happened every class for the last 3 days. That's a whole different level of things we can go and deal with now because we have more information, right? But that kind of constant negativity, that wears on their mental health. And where are we going to send them? I have a school of 1,000 with 2 FSL workers, family school liaisons, counselors. Yeah, I could send them to talk to admin who doesn't have time to talk to them. It's just not going to happen, right? And these are the issues that we were concerned about and why, like even more so than pay. I mean, right, we're grumpy about the pay. Admittedly, I deserve to make a little more than I'm doing. But this, because my working conditions are your kids' learning or not learning conditions. Please hear me when I say that. My working conditions are where your kids are learning. They deserve better, right? And that's why teachers are advocating for it. So what the report found, and what they came up for recommendations, it doesn't differ that much from the 2003 report. The data, though, was more severe. So we did see an increase in the reporting of the number of aggression, things like that. So they're acknowledging things are getting worse. But 7 interventions that they think. We need a new inclusive ed framework. Okay, I am pro-inclusion. I am pro as close to full inclusion as we possibly can get. I am pro-appropriate inclusion. I had my own daughter. Okay, nonverbal, autistic, a couple other descriptors we could carve through in there. She's a spicy little woman. Middle school puberty was really hard on her and everyone around her. And we love her to death, and we understood that she was dysregulated for so many reasons. Why are you taking her to social studies? She's going to lose it in there. She's going to throw a chair. You're going to have to clear the classroom. That's not fair to the other kids. As her mother, I'm telling the teachers, my daughter can't function in your room, right? Not right now, right? Can we transition her back in? Yes, absolutely, and we did. But I had to fight so hard to not have her included, right? We often hear the stories of the other, which are equally terrible, right? The kid who didn't get to go on the field trip, right? No, this needs to change. We need to include everybody as much as we possibly can. And we need to open up that framework to not just be for spec ed kids, because it's not, right? We all have things we need to work on. We have different strengths and weaknesses and struggles, and some just have a label and a diagnosis that come with them, right? A lot of our kids who come from other countries and things like that, they don't have the same reasons for needing support, but they still need support. And full inclusion from an EAL standpoint, right? Kids do learn language pretty quickly. I am so floored by how quickly my students pick up English when they come to Canada. Like, I really am. Unless they have decided not to, right? There's a few that shut down emotionally and are unable to, or they're choosing not to. Mostly I think it's got to be something psychological, right? That's a block for them because their brains are, or maybe they have another learning disability as well, right? I had a kid with apraxia who didn't speak English, and we're not going to get that kid to write a sentence in English. They can't write it in Russian. They have apraxia. But case in point, inclusive ed needs to be something that is a little more flexible because we can't just have all or nothing, right? We can't have all pull out. We can't have all push in, right? So we really do need to come up with a new inclusive ed framework, which is going to require more staffing and more space. Faster supports. Wait list for a diagnosis on autism right now. Chime in the comments if you know. I believe it's 2 years. 6 months for a ed psych assessment, right? Getting supports, FSCD contracts, 2 to 3 years. By then, you're drowning. And those are outside of school things, really. Inside of school, things aren't going any faster. So the kid comes in with, now they have a diagnosis, so then we can add a code, then we can write the IEP, then we can have the meetings, then we can come up with the plan. But we're not going to hire EAs mid-year. Well, there's no funding for it, right? And if you go and watch my video about the funding structure, that I can make that clear there. I don't want to spend time on that. But faster supports, whether it's more people in the building quicker, whether it's access to the programming we need, the resources. Okay, you need a speech-to-text device. Here you go. Like, if this is what your kid needs to learn, then we need to find a way to get it for them. better collaboration. I had a parent interview last week, and I could have had this interview from their perspective. I have. He's like, all right, so my kid has this team outside of school that does all these great things, and you in the school are doing these things, which are as great as you can do. I love the man. He was trying to be kind, but his kid is one of those kids that's not a behavior. So he's really not getting the supports he needs because he's not the squeaky wheel. He's just the quiet, sweetest, kindest young man. Oh my God, my heart. He's the nicest little boy. So he doesn't draw a lot of attention and he just sits there. So he's not getting what he needs, right? So the dad's like, hey, isn't there a way? What do I need to sign so that the EA at school can talk to the EA at home? Right? It's almost impossible to get a lot of this done. There's a lot of barriers in the way. There's got to be a way to make it more simple. And in other places, videos, I've talked about the fact that there's overlap. There are clients that use the education system, social services, policing, healthcare, all of us. Now, a social worker at home and a social worker in the education system and a social worker in the healthcare system, and they're not able to talk to each other. Why don't we just have one social worker working with this family and traversing all of the systems with them? There needs to be a way to build in some fluidity. It frees up resources. If you have one person with the family instead of one person, I don't know. It redistributes. It redistributes the weight of things, I think, in a way that would really benefit everybody, right? But it's really hard to get that collaboration. And then within the day, where are we going to find it? So we do these things, SRG meetings. So I might recommend a kid who I think needs support to identify what they need. We sit down with the team, speech, psych, whoever else is there, parents. It's a collaborative thing. Homeroom teacher tends to be invited. I'm the music teacher. I'm never invited. In fact, I often get to cover other people's classes so they can go to these meetings, and then nobody shares the report with me, right? So this is a common thing. We don't have time to do the collaboration that's required. When 60% of your class requires intervention, you don't have time for those meetings. So you pick the top 2 kids in your class and you try and have the meetings for them. Squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Which is why parents, you need to be louder. You have so much more power. If you come in, not screaming, yelling, you can be polite about this, but firm. My kid needs support. What are you doing? I'm going to check in with you Friday. I'm going to check in with you Tuesday. Please check in with us. We don't have time to check in with you. We think about you all day. We never get around to writing the email, right? Please advocate for your child that way. You have so much more power than you think you do. And that better collaboration leads into cross-ministry work, right? Early intervention. I've spoken about that already in depth today. Stronger teacher prep. Okay, now, are we talking about university prep? Because when I went to university, there was one course on special education and there was nothing about EAL. That has changed. The younger generation of teachers are coming in with this beautiful philosophy of universal design. And it's honestly, it's how I sort of organically have done things, and a lot of us have. When we realize that when you have to write 6 copies of the test so that everybody has their accommodations met, and you start planning differently. Instead of thinking of each kid, you think, what's my highest need in the room? And you plan for that. And in the process, you're going to meet everybody else's, right? But when you design your lesson specifically for the kid who has the highest needs, well, think of all the things you're going to check off that Johnny and, Farah and all the other kids are going to also use, right? This universal design plays really well into the idea of universal accommodations. There are certain things that those of us on the spectrum would really benefit from that would benefit other people too. I mean, how many of you prefer when someone stops you in the hall and says, hey, can you do this? And you say yes, they follow up with an email. Yeah, that's one of my accommodations. If you stop me in the hall and we have a conversation and I commit to something, you need to email me to tell me I committed to it. I might not remember by the time I get to my desk. I have an amazing co-teacher who she'll write things on sticky notes and put them on my computer because she knows I'm not going to remember that conversation, right? My working memory doesn't always allow for that. Things like, I need to see you after school. Or if your boss says, I need to meet with you, and then just walks away, what does your anxiety do, right? How about, I need to meet with you. Don't worry about it. It's just a parent wants to talk about, the shoes. I would know what that means. We'd go on with our day. Then even if it's not a positive conversation, I can mentally prepare for that, right? I don't have to carry it around. It's not taking up space going, meeting after school, wonder what that's about, 75 million scenarios, none of which are real, right? My brain is solution focused, which means it's really good at trying to find all the problems so it can find all the solutions, right? So preparing the environment, right? That's important, right? But universal design, which is beautiful, not a lot of like teachers who graduated from university, I want to say 5 years ago. 5 years ago and up, those new teachers, they have this. The rest of us, we've either figured it out on their own or we're learning with them. It's one of the beautiful things about having student teachers is I get to see some of the new ideas. The field of education is actually really young. Formal education is only a couple of years old, like Industrial Revolution, right? So we expect it to be more mature and have all these answers when we're really still learning how to do this job. And then the children are evolving too, right? The kids we have now are not like the kids we had. I've taught 3 or 4 different versions of children with different, whole other video. And ongoing professional development. Now, that makes me want to like poke myself in the eye because when I go to PD and they're like, where's your writing sample? And I'm like, I teach music. And I'm sitting with the gym teacher and he's like, was I supposed to make them write a paragraph about dodgeball? It isn't always appropriate for us. Understanding what the other teachers are doing with literacy is really important because, believe it or not, music teaches a lot of literacy and I need to know where the kids are struggling so I know what to hit. But ongoing appropriate PD, I would change that too. And the funny thing about this is, see these 7 things? These are all the 7. We were saying this in July, in May, last December, right? So they do the report in July. They have the results in September. We go out on strike. They don't mention that they have the results yet. In fact, I kept checking online because I had time to do research. I'm like, I wonder if that's come out yet. Has not. They sat on it. Like, dude, then once things have calmed enough that we're back at school, disgruntled, whatever, but settled, things have settled, right? Oh, here we have all of these possibilities we can work on in the future. Every damn one of them we told you about. And you denied. Frustrating. So what is missing? Well, action. That's what's missing. Many recommendations echo the ACOL. I did another video on a couple weeks ago. As I said, dudes, you had this. You lied to the public and said you didn't know. Now, okay, maybe plausible deniability is a thing, right? I watched Independence Day the other day, and he's like standing in Area 51. The president's like, "Why didn't you tell me about this?" And he's like, plausible deniability. Nicolades might not have been told. I mean, who knows? Let's speculate. Might not have been told. So to give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe he really didn't know. Maybe Danielle Smith didn't know. Just because she's the premier doesn't mean she reads every document. She doesn't. She relies on people to keep her up to speed. There's no other way you could function in a position like that, right? I respect that. I get that. One of the things you do as a band teacher is you're basically running a not-for-profit. And there's a lot of things that I can't micromanage and I can't know all about, right? So I trust the people I work with to tell me the information I need to know. And I feel that our government probably operates that way as well. But were they actually given the information then? Because if they had, how could they have sat down to negotiate with us in good faith? Because they were literally telling us, you're lying to us. This isn't a problem. You're not seeing it. The aggression's not a problem. It's not the class sizes. It is. It's not just the class sizes. It's the complexity of the class sizes. I've always had big classes. I've taught in rural schools where we didn't have the option. If we wanted to offer a high school course, it was going to have 40 kids in it because we didn't have the staffing to run 2 classes of 20. It was fine. The marking was terrible. In an English class, the marking was ridiculous. But behaviors weren't. The planning wasn't. Yeah, it's a different world. It's the complexities. So we've had some funding commitments from them, right? They're offering us $300 million over 3 years. And that sounds like a lot of money to me, who counts to 4 for a living. And I'm just check my notes, see if I have anything more. No, I don't really. So they said they're going to hire the teachers, and they're going to get us more EAs and more assessments and more data collection, which we don't need. So if we strike data collection off there and just say, can you just stop with that? Or can you settle on one good screener and get rid of the other stupid things? I've talked about those in other videos. 1,500 EAs. First of all, where are you going to get them? Yeah. Then the teachers. So there's some wording that came out afterwards that wasn't discussed. but wording that came out when after Bill 2 came through, and they're like, here's what you're actually getting. And it says something along the lines of the money to hire the teachers can be spent on assessments. So when you see the $300 million over 3 years, it includes all those things. And it's saying to the boards, you decide how you're going to use the money. We gave it to you. You didn't hire the teachers. Well, probably because there aren't enough teachers. That's another issue. So then are we going to see them spending it on those ed psych assessments at $2,700 a pop? Because you can be damn sure that the psychologists who are going to be billing the school aren't going to give us a deal, right? We're not going to have the prorated sliding scale that some people are able to access in the communities, right? No, we're going to be paying top dollars, the $170 to $210 an hour, right? That's what we're going to be paying their fees. And that's what they earn. But that money, okay, so how many ed psych assessments for a teacher's salary? And for me, it's kind of a hard place to sit because, yeah, we need the teachers. We do. But I can't help the kids until I know what's going on, right? And an ed psych assessment is so much more than slapping a diagnosis on a kid. Like the things that you discover when you're doing some of these screenings. I've had this one kid, was an ed psych guy. I don't have that level of assessment training. I have my level B assessment. So I can do Wyatts and Whisks. But this was an even lower level of assessment. This was just one of the ones the province wanted us to do. I noticed that this kid always would stand on left foot when he was spelling. And he was bang on. So I had him sit down, and he made more mistakes. I had him stand on just his right foot. He made more mistakes. I'm like, I want to know why that is. Why is it when you're on your left foot, you can spell? That's cool, right? The research, shows things like boys write better, have better creativity, better flow in sentences when they're right standing up, right? Like, I don't know. I learned so much from these ed psych assessments. And then some of the data from that goes to form bigger conclusions about how groups of children are learning, how different diagnoses, what's commonalities, right? So we need that data, right? But again, this is a health thing. Mental health, learning, it's your body. It's not an educational thing. The symptoms we see in the classroom, that's the part that applies to us. Right? The remediations we have to put into place, that's the part that applies to us, right? So, I don't know. I'm curious to see how that's going to roll out, right? So, will this fix classrooms? It could. It really could. Just like the ACOL from 2003 could have. And the fact that it didn't. That the UCPs, that the Conservatives, that the NDP, none of them implemented it. Okay? So if you're going to go on, because I'm big on recalls too, right? I'm well involved in that world. Dudes, how many decades of governments have done nothing? So this is not a UCP, like, mad at them, just them. Right? The NDP did nothing either. I mean, they fixed our unfunded liability issue. They didn't steal our pensions. They didn't make so many other areas of my life worse. But they didn't do great things for the gas and oil. Right? Like, there's reasons to have problems with every government. My problem with this current government is the complete lack of ethics and the hypocrisy and the cowardice. Like, I mean, honestly, the notwithstanding clause doesn't need to be used. They could have done everything they've wanted to do. It just wouldn't have worked out the way they wanted. They're cowards. They don't want to fight for things, right? So will this fix classrooms? It absolutely could. I guess we'll wait and see. I mean, they're re-announcing mental health things. So clearly the impact on students is the concern, right? Like I said, my working conditions are your kids' learning environment, and this is hitting them, all right? Especially kids who have any additional needs, right? The data being withheld just means it's that longer timeline till it's implemented, right? The irreparable harm, now I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, I don't know if I spelled that right. Irreparable. Maybe you should have 2 R's. Mark Twain said, anyone who can only spell a word one way lacks imagination. So if it's wrong, I'm creative. The irreparable harm that Marlena, pardon me, I don't want to call you your government name. Let's call you your government name because your chosen name is Danielle. But Marlena, when she says the irreparable harm of the strike, she wasn't wrong that there's irreparable harm because we're not with the kids. But the irreparable harm is putting these kids in classrooms where they can't learn because they're not equipped, and we're not equipped to support them, right? So the data is important. You're right, it is. So why haven't we been using it? We've had the data. Impact on teachers. Well, I don't like the gaslighting, right? Like, we already have some trust issues with the government, with a lot of different things, and it's to the point where I'm just not even surprised anymore, and that bothers me, right? I like to see the best in people and give them the benefit of doubt and have a learner's mindset, and I just look at this and I go, so 2003 to now was how many years? Am I going to be making another video? Am I still alive? I don't know. It'll be crazy. The core message: aggression is a symptom. It's a symptom of a problem, and it is confirmed by the report. The government's own data says the problem exists, and the aggression is what we're seeing. We aren't exaggerating. In fact, we're underreporting. So, going off scriptish, I said I would tell you a couple of stories, and maybe I've told some of these in other videos too, but I think they fit here really nicely. So I'm going to tell you a couple of things that have happened to me in my career. So I was 6.5 months pregnant with my 4th child. I was visibly pregnant. It doesn't matter if I was visibly pregnant or not. What happened, happened. I was writing on my board at the end of the day, and a kid comes running down the hall. I'm teaching at a high school in a rural community. Kid comes running down the hall and sees me and says, come, there's a fight. Shit, okay, fine. So I'm pregnant, me waddles down the hall and out to the parking lot where there's about 25 kids standing in a circle around the fight. And it's actually one of the worst physical fights I'd seen. A lot of blood. So my rule is, if my voice doesn't stop the fight, I'm not stepping up. Like, I stop, I give myself space. Knock it off, boys. Right? I don't even know what I yelled. But they stopped. So usually an adult voice snaps them out of it, whatever they're in for the moment. The fight stopped. So then I walk in, I insert myself closer in the situation. The aggressor, the guy on top, I put my hand in between him, I push him back. I'm like, office, we're going there. Don't move yet. I look at the kid on the ground. I'm assessing injuries, broken nose. I'm like going to yell, does anybody have an old shirt or something? Like, I'm trying to figure out what to do with the blood. When somebody comes out of the crowd, another student, high school student, and starts screaming and swearing at me for stopping the fight because the kid on the ground deserved the beating he was getting. How dare I stop the fight? And before I can even say anything, he starts punching me. Like, full on, like, wailing on me and my stomach. And I'm pregnant. The kid with the broken nose is the kid who tries to get between us. I managed to get out of the way and remove myself. And the kid either comes to his senses, that he's, oh my gosh, I've just hit a pregnant woman. I don't know what went through this kid's head, but he took off, right? I get the kids in the building, and then I go to the hospital myself, and I get checked out, and I was kept overnight for observation. You know, things were fine. But emotionally, I mean, okay, let's get past the fact that I'm 6.5 months pregnant, and I've just been beaten up by a man-sized child. And I've got bruises, and I'm sore. I've been pregnant 9 times, and I've only carried 5 to term. So I'm sitting here thinking, the last pregnancy I had before this one, I carried to 4 months, 4.5 months. And that's not a miscarriage. We won't go there. So in my heart and my head, I'm terrified I'm going to lose this child. Thankfully, I don't. Child graduated high school this last June, doing well. No ill harm to the child. But I pressed charges, and I got some pushback from it. I actually had to grieve it through the union to get the day off to go to court. But I honestly felt that at 17, if this individual hadn't figured out that you can't behave this way, I wasn't doing him any favors by allowing that to continue without putting in a consequence. And it was like 90 hours of community service or whatever. He had to look me in the eye on the stand. He had to see the baby. I was holding my child in my arms by the time we got to court. I think he was 4 or 5 months old, so that tells you a little bit about the court timelines. But I felt like I made an impact for the future, that maybe this kid wouldn't do things again because I didn't back down. That's a pretty severe aggression, right? That was an unprompted attack. Now, working in spec ed, I expect to get hit there. I expect to get bit occasionally. I expect to get sworn at. I expect that because, as I've said, behavior is communication. The kid's functionality has a limit that is different than mine, and their toolbox wears out much sooner, and then it's like, right? So I know that. So I expect some of that. I'm a mother of a child with autism. I know that there's going to be some violence and aggression at times. I expect that. But how much? Okay, right? And at what point is it too much? So the biting, I wasn't being provided with Kevlar sleeves. I had to grieve that through my union. Dude, I need safety protection equipment. My own mother, who's an EA, was an EA for years, she got bit by a kid and she ended up in the hospital. She just about died from the infection. I had my Kevlar sleeves, so it still hurt. I got bruises, but okay, we were working on that. I had a boy who kicked me in the shins while wearing winter boots, so hard that it broke the skin. 2 weeks later, he told me to F off, and I gave him a high five, because we don't punish people for going in the direction we need them to be going in. And I'm telling you, being sworn at is a hell of a lot better than being kicked in the shins and bleeding. Let me tell you. So, I mean, there's some areas of my world where I expect aggression. I'm not surprised when a kid gets frustrated and chucks a drumstick across the room. It's there. We expect it, right? But to be verbally attacked by a student the way I have been over the years, or parents. I taught in a school where I had a panic button under my desk and one parent teacher invited a dad come across the desk at me. Yeah, no, I've had aggression from other staff members over the years. Yeah, passive aggressive stuff too, bullying. Yeah, it's we're not exempt from that as adults, right? And I don't think that my experience is atypical. But when I'm at the soccer field and I, tell a story, dark humor, and I'm laughing like high-fived him because, he swore at me, and that's hilarious to me because it is funny to me. But because legit, that's my reality, and I'm happy that he's not kicking me. But just sometimes the look on the parent's face is like, and I'm like, dude, no. Okay, let me soften my reality for you. And I feel like I have to filter it because legitimately this is what we see. And if I'm not seeing it against me, I'm seeing it against other kids. Right? It's constant. It's expected in my world. So what do we need? We don't need this to sit around as long as the one from 2003 without any implementation. We need the government, regardless of party affiliation, to support these recommendations and implement them and fund them in a sustainable way. We don't need, it would help, a quick injection of cash to get things going. But unless you've got a plan, right, for something sustainable, there's no point. It really isn't going to make the situation that much better. You might short-term, might get you reelected, right? So that's the reason they're going to do it. And smart political move, okay? I'll give you that. Yeah, if you're in an elected position, you want to do things that are going to get you reelected. I don't have a problem with that. But I have a problem with it when that's the only reason why you're doing it and there's no long-term sustainability. So here I am, music teacher, count to 4 for a living, and with the recalls, I've been delving really deeply into political reform and ideas because in the back of my head, all I'm thinking is there's some things that are managed by the government which aren't industries. They're services: healthcare, policing, social services, education. Those are the 4 I've sort of picked off the top of my head. Those need to be sustainable for society to exist well. For us to be a healthy society, those 4 need to be stable. So I started looking at the impact of every 4 years, the turnover and the changes, right? How long does it take to create a sustainable system? Okay, policing, 19 years. 19 years without significant change before we have a sustainable system. Healthcare and education is 12 years. So 3 election cycles. I'm going to swear. Every single government needs to get their head out of their ass. You need to find a way to make this work. Because otherwise we're going to be just simply revisiting the same system. History repeats itself and doesn't get better. And I'm here talking to the universe going, hello. And I'm a voice generations behind me have been going, hello. And I just don't want generations after me to be going, what the actual? It's not okay. We know as educators what needs to happen. We know as healthcare people what needs to happen. Social services people know what needs to happen. Policing, they know what needs to happen. In industries, they know what needs to happen. So when the people representing us don't have that knowledge, how much of that can be forgiven? When you first take on a new job, okay, like some Minister of Education, and you don't know the answer, well, I don't know if he knows the answer. I would love to ask him. So, Mr. Demetrios, whose name I'm sure I say wrong. I'd love a chance for someone to correct me on that too. Is it Nicolade? Nicolade? He's Greek, right? It's a good name, good Greek name. If I asked you, what does the statement Maslow before Bloom mean to you? And he gave me a deer in the headlight look. I'd be, yeah, dude, this isn't where you should be. You don't know the basic tenets of how education works. You don't understand that the science of how our body works, we have to be able to learn. People can't always learn. If you're tired, if you're hungry, if you're not safe, you can't learn. Look at the results. I don't know how many slides I'd have to go back. Let me see if I can find it. Nope. Yes. Okay. If 93% of teachers are saying over their careers, and over 50% in the last few months are seeing aggression. Now, does aggression make us feel safe? No. Well, how are we going to learn when we're not safe? I'll just jump to the slide and keep talking because that's what I do. Bloom, on the other hand, so that was Maslow. Maslow's like the safety, right? Get the amygdala disengaged so the rest of our cognition can actually happen up here. Bloom is like a ladder. So Maslow's got his little pyramid, and then it kind of overlaps, right? If you have your very, very, very most basic needs met, then there's some learning that can happen, but it's a very lower level learning, like memorization, right? If we want kids to be able to synthesize ideas, so take an idea from one and another idea and come up with something new, that's a much higher level thinking. Abstract reasoning. Their brains aren't even developed for that, honestly, until much older. Anyways, some of the curriculum that we teach them is developmentally inappropriate, but that's another conversation. If the person who makes decisions, doesn't understand that very basic fact, right? They're not going to be able to make good decisions on policy and curriculum and things because they don't know. And I don't think that that's forgivable at this stage. When you are in a position of leadership, then there's an expectation that you know how to do your job. And if you don't, you need to be willing to learn. So if I didn't know, and when I don't know, I go and ask. I ask a lot of stupid questions. I'm okay with that because, well, maybe I'm a stupid person who needs to be asking the questions. But often if I ask it, other people are thinking it too. And often I just ask it and then I realize it was a stupid question. But I'll go out and I'll look into it, right? Like I'll dive into the research. I'll ask somebody else who has a similar experience. Right? It's go find out, right? That's your job, right? And so until we see some things put in place to help build sustainability, to help the people who are making the decision actually coming from an informed place, yeah, I don't have a whole lot of hope that this is going to make a big difference. The data here is good. I mean, it's bad news, but it's solid data. It jives with what I see anecdotally and from what I hear from other educators. I still remember standing on the train going to one of the rallies in Calgary, and I was just listening to teachers talking about their own experiences and stories and things. They're my story. We're telling the same story. Catholic schools, even private schools, charter schools, public schools, Montessori schools, we're telling the same stories, right? We're seeing the same things. And if you just dismiss that, you're already removing a whole pile of data that's inexpensive and accessible and reliable, right? I don't know why people put more trust in a minister of education who has no educational background than they would in a teacher. That's just bizarre to me, right? That's like asking my 14-year-old son to, I don't know, change a tire when he doesn't know how to drive a car. I mean, that's a terrible analogy, but it's where my silly brain went, right? So in closing, I'm trying to keep up hope The horrors persist, yet so do we. I'm exercising what's left of my democratic rights and freedoms, and I encourage you to do the same. The worst thing we can do is to stop talking about this. I know, I'm tired. This video has been sitting in my queue to go live for 2 weeks. I'm tired. I didn't go to the town hall because, legit, I'm a sober alcoholic. I've got 6 years under my belt, super proud of the journey. I'm in my Phoenix era. So if you want to throw shade at me for being an addict, go ahead. Because I can tell you what I've learned from the experience, and it's a hell of a lot. And I just thought to myself, and the thought crossed my mind, I don't think I can sit through this meeting without a drink. So like, oh, we're just not even going, right? Because that stinking thing. No, we're just not even going to put ourselves in that situation. So I did get some of the talking points, and I will go, and if there's the recording available, I'm going to listen to it. But in small doses that I can pause and process in my own time, because I need to take care of myself too, because this is a marathon and we're fighting the same battles that teachers before us have fought, right? It's not, like even with the recalls, my husband's like, you're not going to be successful with this. It's just, and he's not saying it to be mean. He just, that's what he believes. It's not going to be successful. And that's all fair, but that's not the only reason to do these things, right? So if we want to make change, sometimes it's incremental. And so we make change where we can. So with this really great data that the government has collected, they just need to implement it. And the number of consistencies between this report and the report in 2003 are staggering. I threw it into ChatGPT, and if you want to trust their math, they count to 4 better than I do maybe. They said there was a 60 to 70% overlap. All right? So there's data that's changed, obviously, not for the better. But the recommendations that were made in 2003, if they had been implemented, I don't think we'd be where we are now, right? And so as I've said, that's not just a UCP issue. The NDP are equally to blame for that. They did nothing about this. They had that report. So I think in general, we just need to hold our governments accountable. We need to stay talking about this so that people don't forget about it. Your children deserve better. Right? My working conditions are your children's learning conditions. And the symptom of aggression that I'm seeing every day is because there are other basic needs not being met, other services that aren't in place, other things that need to be done to support these families and these children. And so this report actually acknowledges that. And I think that's great. Good job, UCP. I'm saying something nice about you. You did a good job on this study, or the people you hired to do it. It is a good study. It's better than the one you did on books, which wasn't fit for making policy decisions on. Said it in the disclaimer. You can make policy off of this one. Please do. Right? You have the data. You have the resources. Let's make some changes. Because that's all we need right now. Is just to start moving forward. None of this is going to be fixed overnight. I'm okay with that. I just need to see some change. And it's really hard to return to the same environment with the same supports and not see a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like Einstein says, expecting different results when you're always doing things the same way is insanity, right? That's not what Einstein said. He said it much nicer. I'm sure you can find it in a little poster somewhere. I'm paraphrasing, but I stand by it. It's insanity. We're working in an insane loop of stupidity. We don't have to. So, thanks for watching. If any of the things I'm talking about resonate with you, please feel free to put things in the comments. Be kind to each other. If you have opposing views to me, I'd love to hear them. I think we need to be having these difficult conversations. I don't think that going into just our factions and just talking to the people who think the way I think and them talking the way they... No. Let's have those conversations, okay? Because there's common ground in here. There is. A lot of the things I'm saying aren't just woke and crazy. There's stuff that... And there's stuff that you're going to tell me that's going to change my mindset. I mean, I'm always learning and pivoting. You know what you know, right? That's a life lesson. If you can acknowledge when you meet people and you just have to understand they know what they know, right? Like, why am I getting mad at the kid for not staying on the blue sit spot? Was my blue circle on the floor? Oh, wait, the kid didn't know what blue was. Of course he's not going to stay on the blue spot. He doesn't know blue, right? So sometimes our frustrations are misplaced because of misunderstandings. We need to talk. We need to have these difficult conversations, and that is what I am here for. So moving forward, I want to hear both sides of the issues on this. There are definitely some things I know missing from this report that would make it even better, but you know what? It's a damn good starting place. And that's what I said about the one from 2003. If you have a damn good starting place and you don't start, dude, you're not doing your job, right? Because your job as a government is to create a society that is sustainable and hopefully improve it, right? I'll leave that with you. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening and go and spend some time with your family and friends. And I'm going to go hang out and watch movies because guess what? For the first time this year, I can say this out loud. It won't be true tomorrow morning. My grades are up to date. All 14 classes up to date. Yeah, that's worth celebrating. Maybe I'll go eat lunch because I haven't eaten yet today. I had a bagel at 6:45 this morning. So, busy day, and I hope you guys all enjoy your evening. Like, share, subscribe. Let's get the momentum going on what I have to talk about, because what I'm saying is what a lot of people are saying. And if it's not, I want to hear about it. Enjoy your evening.